I'm standing in rubble, splintered pine beams scattered like broken bones, shattered windows glinting in the afternoon sun. My grandfather's hand-carved railing, the one he shaped with a drawknife over 3 winters, crushed under a bulldozer track. Everything reeks of diesel and 60 years of stolen memories. They demolished my family's cabin 5 days ago while I was in Memphis burying my father. No permit, no warning, no legal right. Just a bulldozer, a smug HOA president named Constance, and a forged court order. She thought I was just another grieving son she could steamroll. Too broke and broken to fight back. Big mistake. I'm Marcus Aboa, county building inspector for 18 years. Every demolition in this county crosses my desk. Every code violation, every secret. Constance just handed me a felony wrapped in a bow. What would you do if your HOA destroyed your inheritance while you buried family? Drop it below. Where are you watching from? I guarantee your neighbor has an HOA nightmare, too. Let me back up. 6 weeks before the rubble, before Constance made the worst decision of her entitled life, my father died of a heart attack on a Tuesday. Found him in his recliner. Braves game still on. He was 73. I was his only son. The cabin was supposed to be our retirement plan, 2 old men on a dock teaching my daughter how to gut trout the way 3 generations of Aboa men learned. That cabin was built in 1963 by my grandfather Hank. World War II vet, master carpenter, the kind of man who shaped wood like other men shape excuses. Took him 2 years. Every beam, every joint, every carved railing done by hand. I can still smell it, cedar planks and fish cleaner fluid, metallic well water ice cold in August, the creak of dock boards underfoot. At dawn, loons calling across the water like church bells. Every door frame had his tool marks, imperfections that were perfect because they were his. That cabin was our family tree turned into timber and memory. Then came Constance Merrill, president of the Willow Shores HOA. The kind of woman who believed a clipboard gave her divine authority. Her house sat 2 lots over, all white vinyl and quartz perfection. She hated the cabin. Said it didn't fit the aesthetic. Too rustic, too old. 3 years ago, she tried to find me 4 non-compliant exterior materials. I laughed. Told her the cabin was grandfathered before the HOA existed. She didn't like that word, grandfathered. It meant she couldn't touch me. But Constance had patience like rot in a floorboard. Slow, silent, and hungry. When my father passed, the obituary ran in the county paper. 2 days later, a certified letter showed up, notice of code violation. Unapproved deck extension, they said. Unsafe structure. Nonsense. I built that deck myself last summer, passed every inspection. My own signature was on the permit. That's when I knew something was off. Then Memphis called. Funeral arrangements. Paperwork. I drove out Friday. By Monday, bulldozers rolled in. Neighbors filmed from their porches. You can still hear Constance's voice on one video. It's condemned property. We're doing them a favor. A favor. Now, I'm here, staring at the remains. My daughter's toy boat half buried in mud. My father's tackle box crushed open, hooks glinting in the dirt like teeth. But here's the thing about me Constance didn't know, I don't break easily. I document. I record. I report. And I know every law she just violated. The rubble at my feet isn't an ending. It's an investigation. The morning after, I woke up with sawdust in my lungs and vengeance in my chest. The air smelled like rain, but it wasn't weather, it was warning. I drove to the county building department, the same beige office where I've spent nearly 2 decades making sure people like Constance followed the law. The receptionist looked up as I walked in. "Morning, Marcus," she said softly, eyes full of sympathy. "I heard about your father. I'm so sorry." I nodded. "Thanks, Mel. Just need to check something real quick. I logged into the county database, my own system, and pulled up the parcel record for 422 Willow Shores Drive. My family's property. It should have been locked, protected. But what I saw made my stomach turn. A demolition permit. Approved. Signed, supposedly, by me. Only, I didn't sign it. Wrong pen type. Wrong formatting. Wrong digital seal. Whoever forged it didn't realize my signature carries a specific embedded key, invisible to the naked eye but traceable by me. Amateurs. I printed every file, every timestamp, every scrap of digital evidence. Then I checked the contractor field, Northlake Contracting LLC. The name hit me like a hammer. Northlake was owned by Elliot Merrill, Constance's husband. They didn't even bother hiding it. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the screen, heart pounding in my ears. They'd committed 3 felonies, forged documents, illegal demolition, and conflict of interest. And they'd done it while I was standing over my father's casket. That wasn't negligence. That was a message. I left the office with a folder full of printed evidence. The morning sun glared off my windshield as I pulled into Willow Shores. The entire Lakeside community looked different now, the smiles, the trimmed hedges, the pastel houses. They all felt fake, like the set of a show where everyone pretended not to hear the truth screaming behind closed doors. When I parked in front of what used to be my cabin, a few neighbors peeked through blinds. I ignored them. The ground was still muddy from the demolition, tire tracks baked into the earth like scars. I crouched and ran my hand over one, Caterpillar Model 963, standard issue for county demolitions. Only contractors registered with the county can rent one. Guess who signed off on Northlake's equipment authorization? Constance. I took photos, everything. Debris tags, track marks, serial numbers. Every little detail that would later stitch this case together. My phone storage filled up fast, but I didn't stop. Every picture was evidence. Every click was a nail in Constance's legal coffin. As I walked back toward my truck, I spotted something half buried in mud, a splintered piece of my grandfather's handrail, carved initials H burned into the wood. Hankaboa. My grandfather. I picked it up and just stood there. The smell of wet cedar hit me like memory. That was the moment the grief burned off and something colder took its place. I wasn't just a son anymore. I was an investigator. By evening, I had a folder 2 inches thick, forged signatures, demolition photos, permit discrepancies, timestamps, everything. I spent the night building my case, labeling evidence with precision only 18 years in the field can teach you. When I finally looked up from my desk, it was 1:47 a.m. The cabin was gone, my father was gone, but the truth? That was just getting started. Constance thought she'd buried my legacy. She had no idea she'd just given me jurisdiction over her downfall. Tomorrow, I'd pay her a visit, not as a neighbor. As the county building inspector whose signature she dared to forge. The Willow Shores HOA office sat at the edge of the lake like a glass and stucco fortress. Too clean. Too perfect. Like Constance herself. The woman had turned neighborhood management into her personal monarchy, monthly meetings that felt more like royal decrees. I parked across the street, folder in hand, heart steady as a ticking clock. Inside, everything smelled like lavender cleaner and control. The walls were lined with glossy photos, Community Beautification Awards, Annual Summer Gala, President, Constance Merrill. Her smile was everywhere, wide and hollow. "Mr. Aboa," said the receptionist, a nervous young woman I'd seen around. "Do you, have an appointment?" "Not exactly," I said, flashing my county badge. "But I have county business." Her eyes widened. "Oh. Of course, sir. Mrs. Merrill's in a meeting." "Perfect," I said, walking past before she could finish. The door to the conference room was half open. Constance sat at the head of a long mahogany table, her blonde hair pulled tight, pearls glinting under fluorescent light. 3 HOA board members sat beside her, nodding like trained pigeons. When she saw me, her smile didn't falter, but her fingers froze mid-click on her tablet. "Marcus," she said smoothly. "We were just discussing the debris removal from that old cabin of yours. Such a tragedy." I placed the folder on the table with a soft thud. Tragedy's one word for it. Felony's another. The room went still. "Excuse me." I opened the folder. Spread out printed emails, permit copies, time-stamped demolition records. Her signature, her husband's company logo, my forged approval. "This is everything your HOA submitted to authorize demolition. Including the permit you forged. The one with my name on it." Constance laughed, too loud, too fast. "Marcus, you must be mistaken. Northlake handled that under county supervision. I assure you." "You assure me?" I leaned forward, voice low. "I am county supervision." One of the board members coughed awkwardly. Another started shifting papers just to make noise. Constance's smile wavered for the first time. "Marcus, let's not make this personal." "Oh, it's personal. You bulldozed a 70-year-old home that stood before your HOA even existed. No notice. No permit. No rights. You forged a government document, hired your husband's company, and destroyed county property while I was at my father's funeral." Her face drained of color. The youngest board member whispered, "Wait, she hired Elliot's company?" I turned to him. "Yeah. Check the contractor registry. Same address, same tax ID. She signed the request herself." "Constance," another member muttered, "is that true?" She straightened, voice trembling now. "This is all a misunderstanding. The cabin was unsafe, non-compliant with." "Don't." I slammed my hand on the table, the sound echoing off the walls. "You don't get to hide behind policy when you forged the damn policy." For a moment, nobody breathed. Then I gathered the papers and tucked them back into my folder. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "The county will open a criminal investigation. Your husband's company will be suspended pending review. You'll surrender HOA authority until the case closes. And when the audit hits your books, you'd better pray your accounting's cleaner than your conscience." Constance swallowed hard. Her voice came out small. "You can't threaten me like this." I stepped closer, met her eyes, and smiled. That wasn't a threat. That was a courtesy. Then I turned and walked out. Outside, the lake shimmered calm and silver. The wind off the water carried the scent of pine and justice, faint, but real. I stood there for a moment, watching sunlight touch the waves, and for the first time since the funeral, I felt something close to peace. Constance thought she'd won. She had no idea the storm had just begun. By the following Monday, the case file sat on the county attorney's desk. I made sure of it. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could: timestamps, permits, contracts, signatures, and the smoking gun, Northlake Contracting's payment routed straight from the HOA's beautification fund. 2 days later, I was officially removed from handling the investigation. Conflict of interest, they said. That was fine. I didn't need a title to keep digging. The county sent in an external auditor, a quiet woman named Linda Parsons, sharp, efficient, the kind who didn't blink twice at power plays. Within a week, she found irregularities in almost every HOA account Constance managed. Misused dues. False maintenance reports. Shell invoices signed by Elliot Merrill. It wasn't just one illegal demolition, it was a pattern. I met Linda at a small diner off Route 22. She slid a folder across the table, steam from our coffee rising between us. "You were right," she said. "This isn't about one cabin. It's about half the neighborhood." I flipped through the documents, fake vendor names, payment loops, even an emergency drainage repair billed 3 times over. She's been bleeding them dry, I muttered. Bleeding you all dry, Linda corrected. And now she's under review by the DA's office. I looked out the window toward the lake. Across the water, the spot where my cabin once stood shimmered beneath the sun. Empty, but not forgotten. That night, I parked on the edge of Willow Shores and watched. Constance's house glowed like a beacon, white shutters, trimmed hedges, motion lights snapping on every few seconds. Inside, I could see shadows moving fast, panic replacing her usual poise. She knew the county was closing in. By Wednesday, the whispers had started. Neighbors at mailboxes, murmuring about embezzlement and investigations. HOA members quietly resigning, distancing themselves. Someone even spray-painted "thief" on the HOA office door. Constance tried to keep control. She held an emergency meeting in the clubhouse, to clarify misinformation, she said in the community group chat. I went. Sat in the back. Her voice shook behind that same practiced smile. The county's review is simply procedural, she said. All records will be cleared. We've always acted within our bylaws. A man in the front row stood up, retired veteran, lived here 30 years. You destroyed that man's cabin, he said, pointing straight at me. And now you say you acted within the rules. You're a liar, Constance. The room erupted. Years of pent-up frustration poured out, noise violations, unfair fines, bullying letters, threats. Everything she'd buried under her perfect reputation came clawing to the surface. Constance tried to shout them down, but her voice cracked. I just sat there, silent, letting the chaos unfold. Truth didn't need my help anymore. It had momentum now. That night, Linda called again. The DA's office is issuing subpoenas, she said. And Marcus, there's one more thing. She hesitated, then added, we found an insurance claim filed on your cabin 3 days before it was demolished. Guess whose name was on it? I didn't have to guess. Constance had planned it all, fake safety violation, forged permit, insurance payout. My father hadn't even been in the ground a week, and she'd already turned our grief into profit. I stood there in my kitchen, staring at the papers, feeling something deep and raw twist inside me. Grief, fury, disbelief, all braided together. But it wasn't despair anymore. It was direction. She wanted to erase my family's legacy for money. I was going to erase her empire for justice. The day the warrants came down, the lake was still. No wind, no birds, just silence so heavy it felt like the water itself was waiting to breathe. I parked across from Constance's house. County vehicles already lined the street, marked cars, unmarked sedans, one tow truck idling with its flashers on. The neighbors watched from their lawns, clutching coffee mugs and curiosity. When the front door opened, Constance stepped out wearing her trademark white blazer, but her confidence was gone. Her wrists gleamed, not pearls this time, but steel. Elliot followed behind her, face gray as wet cement. The sheriff read their rights. Constance tried to talk, something about a misunderstanding, about politics, but no one listened. Cameras flashed. Someone filmed on their phone. For the first time in her perfect little kingdom, she had no control. I stayed in my truck, watching through the windshield. Didn't feel joy. Didn't even feel anger. Just a kind of quiet peace, the kind that only comes when truth finally does its job. By noon, the HOA board had resigned. The county froze the association's accounts, and Linda texted me one line. Full restitution approved. That night, I walked down to what was left of the cabin. The air smelled like wet pine and diesel, faint ghosts of what had been. The rubble had been cleared, leaving a raw patch of earth overlooking the lake. For the first time in weeks, I stood there without shaking. In my hand was a small wooden piece, my grandfather's railing, initials HA carved deep and dark. I knelt, pressed it into the soil where the front steps used to be. "This was yours first," I whispered. The water rippled softly, like it heard me. "I don't know if I'll rebuild the cabin. Maybe someday. Maybe I'll leave it as it is, a scar with purpose." Sometimes scars remind people what happens when they think power makes them untouchable. A month later, the county announced formal charges: forgery, embezzlement, insurance fraud, illegal demolition, abuse of authority. Constance's name was on every headline. Elliot's company was stripped of its license. The community changed too. The new HOA board reached out, apologized. Said they wanted to make things right. They offered to rebuild the dock in honor of my father and grandfather, not because they had to, but because they finally saw what that cabin meant. I accepted. Not the dock. The acknowledgement. That was enough. Sometimes justice isn't about punishment. It's about memory surviving power. On a clear Saturday morning, I brought my daughter down to the water. We cast a line off what used to be the dock. The lake was calm, sunlight dancing across its surface. She looked up at me and said, "Grandpa would have liked it here." "Yeah," I said. "He still does." Behind us, Willow Shores was quiet. No HOA letters. No threats. Just neighbors mowing lawns, kids biking past, peace where arrogance used to live. As the sun dipped low, I packed our gear and looked once more at the spot where everything had fallen apart, and somehow come back together. People think lakes forget, that time washes everything clean. But they don't. Water remembers. Wood remembers. And men like me. We build again.